What did you notice specifically when you were looking at your depression, looking at all these different elements and trying to make sense of it?
So, I think I had a little bit of a leg up on other people in that I have been practicing mindfulness, this cognitive skill, for 30 years. I've been meditating for almost as long. And mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn defines it as being aware in the present moment without judgment. And that was what I pulled in. And he also, talks about being with every feeling that's there. The skill is not about recognizing hard feelings and running away from them. The skill is about being with those hard feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and then making an active decision about what you want to do with it. That's where the skill part comes in. Takes a lot of practice, but has saved my life time and time again. It has opened up new doors of opportunity for me time and time again. And it is the center of all of the work that I do now and have been doing for the last many years. It's amazing. I want everybody to know this, Pat. Everybody to know that you have the agency to, you know, choose how you think, to choose how you live, even when things are really, really hard. That is in our power. And it's pretty awesome.
Cole Baker Bagwell is inspirational. She's an ICF Master Certified Life Coach. She focuses on coaching women to develop a growth mindset that ignites self awareness, alignment, and most of all, positive action. Her newest endeavor is at a tech company where she's sharing her wisdom on mindfulness and consciousness. Cole is someone who practices what she preaches. She works to live and thrive in the moment, day after day. This is a podcast about developing the skills to relish a truly joyful life, moment by moment. Cole, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Pat. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. You are an amazing soul with so much spirit and positivity, and it's a joy to be with you every single time. So again, thanks for having me. Um, my short story. All right. So, I've experienced multiple bumps in the road. It's just part of life. My most recent bump in the road was an unexpected one. And it came on the other side of a very intentional choice that my husband and I made to leave our home city of Raleigh, North Carolina, and move to a very beautiful and very isolated little tiny mountain town about 2.5 hours west of here. So, we thought through it. We had all of the best reasons for going, and we were just thrilled, tickled pink about, oh, we're gonna start this new pace of life, and it's gonna be so fabulous. And we went in with all this optimism and positivity. Um, and then this interesting thing happened. So I work remotely, like a lot of people do. And that had never been a problem because I had worked remotely for moons. So I'm very good at it. And that's the point. But what I didn't expect was the isolation that I would feel being in this teeny tiny mountain town, my closest grocery store 20 minutes away, a 2-lane road to take me there. And I would literally walk through my neighborhood, which was gorgeous, full of woods and deer and wild turkey and all kinds of critters. But most days I would not see another human face for 8 to 9 hours until my husband would get home from work. And I began to notice that I wasn't feeling the effervescence that I usually have felt across my life. I wake up and I'm like, hello, world, I'm here, I'm ready to go. And one morning, it was a heartbreaking morning, and I may actually cry telling you this story now. My husband looked at me and he said, "What are you excited about today?" And I could not find a single thing, Pat. And I looked at him and I said, "Absolutely nothing."
Mm.
I'm excited about nothing. And I became aware of this really dark feeling that I had. And I realized that I was experiencing depression for the first time in my life because I was so isolated, because I am a person who needs people. And it was really, really tough. So, through my day, I was waking up and meditating. I was, taking my walks. I was doing all the good things for myself. I was reading, I was journaling, I was coaching other women on how to step into their lives. And it was almost unbearable some days for me to keep going. I felt like I was kind of hanging on by my fingertips. And my husband would come home and he would see this woman who was had a smile on her face, who was deeply sad. He could feel it. Um, and you know what? I didn't raise my hand and tell my friends or tell my family. And I realized the reason now that I didn't do it is because if I had spoken it, then it was real. So it was this not just a bump, it was like it felt like a sinkhole,
An
Pat.
abyss.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. And it was so foreign to me because I had never experienced anything like that ever before. And so it gave me great empathy for people who do struggle with depression day in and day out. It's so awful. Um, so that was the big meltdown moment. And around October of last year, I spoke it out loud and I cried my eyes out and I said to my husband, we have to do something different. I have to move back to Raleigh. I can't stay here in this beautiful, whimsical place in the woods any longer. I feel like I'm disappearing. So that's what I was dealing with.
What did you do to get yourself out of it in addition to looking at it square on and accepting it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have this way of meeting difficult feelings and emotions, and it's going to sound a little crazy, but I'm actually writing a book about this right now for other women. I imagine them as my counsel. So I have various members of my council. I have fear, I have ego, I have imposter syndrome, I have worry, the daughter of fear. I have all of these personas that sort of show up. And of course, they're just all parts of myself. But I had never met the woman called depression before. And so when she showed up, it was one of those things that I had to learn her language and I had to learn how to meet her. So the first thing that I did was I got super curious about where she came from and spent a lot of time with that. And I wrote, I have these wonderful journals. They're all different colors. They're about 300 pages long. And I filled 4 of those in a matter of a few months, just wrote everything out. I was coaching myself. This was my process of working through it very mindfully. And I would ask her, it sounds a little crazy, but I would wake up in the morning and ask her questions like, you know, how long do you need to visit today? What is it that you need me to understand? And as I asked myself those questions and I was able to reflect mindfully, which is, mindfulness is this cognitive skill that is so powerful. I mean, has the power to change our lives. And it certainly did change mine again in this instance. But I was able to capture and get very clear about the choices I had made that had landed me in that place, that had invited her to come along and hang out with me. And then it became a series of new choices that I knew I had the opportunity to make. They were not easy. They required that we upended our life and we moved again, and that I switched gears a little bit from a professional perspective. So I sat down and I began calculating these choices. And I'm looking at this gorgeous road behind you. It kind of felt like that. I was drawing out the path to where I wanted to go, to where I needed to go in that moment to leave depression behind and to step back into myself. So it took about 3 months of planning and we made it happen. We ended up um, making some very courageous choices to my husband, had to leave his school where he was teaching and get a brand new job here in Raleigh,
Wow.
which he did. Thank goodness. We had a lot of people helping us along the way and supporting us, which what once you raise your hand, that's what I want to mention. Like once you raise your hand and you say, "Hey, this is our intention, this is what we want to do." There are so many people that are willing to help, and it's so awesome to know that. And then I raised my hand and I reached out to my network of women that I've known professionally, and I said, "Hey, I really want to be part of a team again. I love coaching one on one. And I also really want to be part of a team again because I knew every time I thought about it, I felt that effervescence, that bubbly, excited feeling. And so I kind of put it out there that like by the beginning of 2025, all of these things would be in place. And they were in place by July of this year. So it's just amazing. But we got laser focused, and I'll use the word manifestation as a concrete cognitive action to get very clear on what you want. And then by doing that, in my case, I was able to define the steps that I could take to get there. So that's how we did it. We found an apartment in Raleigh. Still have the house in the mountains. It's still there, but have an apartment here, and we said yes, let's jump in, and it has been the most amazing thing in the world because I'm back.
You mentioned that mindfulness is a cognitive skill.
Yeah.
What did you notice specifically when you were looking at your depression, looking at all these different elements and trying to make sense of it?
So, I think I had a little bit of a leg up on other people in that I have been practicing mindfulness, this cognitive skill, for 30 years. I've been meditating for almost as long. And mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn defines it as being aware in the present moment without judgment. And that was what I pulled in. And he also, talks about being with every feeling that's there. The skill is not about recognizing hard feelings and running away from them. The skill is about being with those hard feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and then making an active decision about what you want to do with it. That's where the skill part comes in. It takes a lot of practice. But has saved my life time and time again. It has opened up new doors of opportunity for me time and time again. And it is the center of all of the work that I do now and have been doing for the last many years. It's amazing. I want everybody to know this, Pat. Everybody to know that you have the agency to, you know, choose how you think, to choose how you live, even when things are really, really hard. That is in our power. And it's pretty awesome.
And I think the power of that choice demands presence.
Yeah, absolutely. Presence even when it's super uncomfortable. And that's the thing, I think a lot of us, myself included, at times this is why I formed the council, as I call them. These scary feelings come in, anxiety, depression, fear, worry, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, like all of them. They just all show up, and some of us have the tendency to just push them away because they're very, very painful to sit with. It takes a lot of courage to be with the things that frighten us most or make us feel, the least strong. But in my experience, personal experience, and then in my experience as a coach, it is one of those things that, wow, when you can muster up that courage to be with all of the scary, there is an inverse personality to all of that. And that is the opportunity that we have, is to be with, to kind of understand the origin story of these things. Do they come from our past? Are they representing a time in the future? Or is it something that's happening right here, right now, in this present moment? And then we're able to understand, okay, I know where it's coming from. And what do I want to do with it? So it sounds easy, and I guess theoretically it is, but it requires, like I said, a lot of courage and a lot of presence for sure to be there and to be willing to sit with instead of run from.
I think as you develop a habit of mindfulness, of presence, a habit of meditation, it opens up this window in time. At least this is one of the ways I look at it. And that is because you're more aware of your thoughts, you can pause and make a conscious choice. You don't
That's
just
right.
react, but you
Yeah.
have choice. And that's a game changer right there.
Oh, for sure it is. I mean, for sure it is. Think about all the things that you've navigated that required response instead of reaction. And I mean, we can feel that difference in our bodies as well. Our one thing I want to make really clear is that our brains are wired to survive. So we are wired to perceive threat. We are wired to look for where the bottom can fall out, the whole 9 yards. It is part of our survival mechanism. And we also have neuroplasticity. It's just as real. This opportunity to choose, this opportunity to not necessarily override the perception of threat and the acknowledgement of threat, but to make that choice, like you're saying, in that moment, to say, okay, I know that this thing could happen. And I'm feeling really afraid right now. I know that because my body is kind of feeling like it does when I'm afraid or when I'm fearful. And that's where we hit the pause button right there. That is the moment of opportunity. That is the moment where we do have the chance to respond instead of react. And you're right. It's a full-on game changer. It's awesome.
And it's an opportunity to rewrite your brain's story.
Yeah,
So when you're faced with this negative, difficult circumstance, which brings up all your fears, and you're looking at that really dark path. But if you can pause and consciously choose to write a script for a different path, now you're programming your brain in a way that benefits you, as opposed to a reactionary program that's embedded from who knows what in your past.
that's right. And that programming is actually wired from like cave people days. Like it's as old as time. And so here's a great sort of analogy that I share with people to sort of envision this. So that beautiful road that you have behind you, imagine that underneath that gorgeous road is your primal wiring for your brain and maybe even past experiences because of something you've learned or something you've experienced in your life. So that'll always be there underneath the gorgeous road that is above that I'm seeing behind you right now. And that gorgeous road above is the one that we have the opportunity to build through neuroplasticity. We can literally open up new neural pathways by practicing this art, this cognitive skill of mindfulness, knowing full well that everything we are born to be is still there. And by the way, it's good that it's still there because we might need it in case like a bear is chasing us or the car flips over and it's on fire. We need that primal part to kick in, that old road to kind of rise up. But day to day, creating the new road, it's absolutely possible for every single one of us.
On the topic of neuroplasticity, um, one of the things that I find fascinating is this left brain, right brain dichotomy we all have, and our
Mhm.
society so fosters the analytical left brain methodology in terms of approaching life. But I would argue we need both. We need both sides,
Sure.
but I think we need to cultivate our right brain characteristics more and more.
Yeah, I mean, there's science behind that too, and not just we need to, we can. Isn't that wonderful that we can? So, one of the things that I talk about is this difference in energy, and it is, you know, in my world, we call it divine feminine, divine masculine energy. So, and it's not relegated to a gender; they are
Mhm.
attributes. So, divine masculine is goal oriented, productivity. Um, you know, what can we accomplish? What can we do? What can we build? And we need that for sure, because
Mhm.
otherwise we just be sitting around like little lumps of, you know,
Yeah,
like
surfing YouTube.
directionless joy is what we would be. But the other part of that, the divine feminine energy, is our creativity, our intuition, our play, need for play and need for some slow time. So when the beautiful part comes, just like with the brain, merging the left and the right by activating both. When we activate both of those energies, we're able to step into that, and it's a huge opportunity. Like I look at, news and newspaper and the world, and I think, oh wow, if we can just have a little more play and creativity and intuition, how wonderful would this world be? So yeah, that's an opportunity as well.
Well, and I think paying attention to your heartfelt sense, that intuitive sense that we all have, is really important. And that too is something we can cultivate.
Yeah. Yeah, we can. I mean, people with intuition are not mystical. They're not mediums or psychics. I mean, it feels that way sometimes, but every single one of us is born with intuition. And I was talking with a good friend of mine about this a few months ago, and she was telling me. So the question I posed for her was, why do you think some people just aren't tapped into their intuition? Because I can't help it, Pat. I'm like a human like radar for everything out there. So, and it's a blessing and a curse, believe
Yeah.
me. Um, and so she was telling me that she had given this some thought as well. And here's where she landed, that it comes down to sort of how we were parented. So, for instance, if a child walks in and hears a mom and a dad arguing or two parents arguing, and they say, "What's wrong? Is everyone okay?" And the parents respond and say, "Everything's fine." Then
Mm.
that is dampening that child's awareness of what's actually happening in that moment. And over time, the more and more and more that happens, the more disconnected we become from that intuition. So, and to the, on the same lines, like when I call it time traveling, living in the past or hanging out in the future, and we're not really here in this present moment, we are missing that opportunity to really drop in to what we know, that deep wisdom that every single one of us has. And we miss that. But when we can tap into it, oh man, it's like everything we need, we are born with, truly. And it's just a matter of honoring all that we're born with.
I often say we spend the first half of our lives having all this crap just piled upon us. And then we spend the second half of our lives trying to peel it away to get back to who we are. And you don't have to wait for the second half of your life. You can do this sooner. But I think it is really that sense of presence is such a key component. And I would argue, actually, if you're not present, you are missing your life.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, what's right in front of you? And I want to circle back to, the abyss that I fell into.
Mhm.
So we had been in Raleigh for about maybe a month and a half, and I was getting my bearings and, really reacclimating into the world. And it was felt a little overwhelming at times. But I knew it was necessary, had to do it. And I really wanted to do it. I really wanted to be back in the world. So I remember this one day vividly. My husband and I took our two pups to this beautiful walk about 3 blocks from here to the rose garden. And no phones, no nothing. I mean, that's my rule. I don't walk with a phone. I just walk with
Yeah.
myself. So we're walking and I stood still for this moment. And imagine, Pat, there are just, I mean, rows and rows of gorgeous roses everywhere. And there's mully grass and gorgeous trees because NC State is a horticulture school. So we have master gardeners. Like it's just mind-blowingly beautiful. And I stood there, I took my shoes off, I stood in the grass, and I watched my dogs running and with so much joy. And I felt the joy wash over me. But it didn't come from the outside, it came from the inside. And it was the first time that I had felt that kind of internal joy in 2 years. It was unbelievable. So, but it was because I was there in that moment. I wasn't even talking with my husband. I was just walking and just witnessing what was happening around me right then. And wow, it's fantastic. It's a great way to work. It's a great way to live. It's a great way to be in relationship. For me, it's like the only way to be in work, relationship, or life is to be in this present moment. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And joy's interesting. It definitely comes from within. And I think it also comes from presence.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. You've said presence about 7 times now. So, yes, what does
Well,
it mean to be present? What does it mean to be present? It means that you are right here, right now, all senses firing. What can you smell? What can you hear? What does the temperature feel like on your skin? What does the earth feel like below your feet or the chair below your bum? Like it is being here. And sometimes that is hard.
oh,
Sometimes
it
it's
can be very
hard,
hard.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard because sometimes the present is not is not great. Sometimes it's fraught with challenges, and sometimes it's fraught with those, scary emotions, the council emotions that we talked about.
Sometimes it's full of checklists,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
where we're just planning the next activity in our head that has to get done.
and so then that's not being present, is it?
No, not at all.
No. I always look to see how many tabs I have open on my computer when I'm working. I mean, because
I would
that's
be
like
afraid to look.
well, that's a pretty surefire sign of how present are you in that moment?
Absolutely.
Our brains are not meant for multitasking, so when we're time traveling between past and future, kind of gliding through the present, just, blink of an eye, when we have all these tabs open on our computer, or the task list is 10 miles long, or we are doing laundry and also on a conference call, and also figuring out how we're going to walk the dogs, like that takes us away from the gift that is here in front of us right now, or the opportunity that we have to meet this moment and choose what we want to do.
Yep. Have you, do you know Jill Bolta Taylor by any chance? She's a Harvard psychologist that did the talk, My Stroke of Insight.
No, I don't think so. I'll have to
She's
look
a
that up.
psychologist. She's a brain researcher. About 10 years ago, she, had a terrible stroke, and
Mm.
it took her about 8 years to come back. She did the talk in a book called My Stroke of Insight, but her recent book is called Whole Brain Living.
Oh,
And
wow.
it is fascinating. It draws both on her scientific and technical background, as well as her experience watching her brain shut down and learning to bring everything back online.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating book. I'm going to just butcher her words, so forgive me. But essentially, she divides the brain into 4 parts, okay? Front left part is a part of you that's really great at checklists. It's the
Yeah.
doer. It gets everything done, you know?
Yeah.
Left, rear is your neurotic self, the one that finds something wrong, something to be afraid of, something to be leery of no matter what. Right rear is a 2-year-old who takes 6 flavors of ice cream out of the freezer, takes 1 bite out of 1 flavor, leaves them all to melt because the first part of your brain will clean it up. And then and then the last part, your left frontal part, is that more spiritual, expansive, connecting part.
Yeah.
And she experienced that very deeply and profoundly going through this stroke because the left side of her brain where the stroke was had completely shut down. So
Yeah.
she found herself in this wow environment that she had never experienced before. It's a fascinating book because one of the things that she points out is that when this neurotic part of your brain, the disasterizing part of your brain kicks in, the key is to have your 2-year-old talk to it. And it's fascinating. I've used this methodology actually. And your 2-year-old is just fun and accepting and not critical. And that allows you to get rid of all these anxieties that you have. And because you're being heard.
Hmm.
And I think being heard is a big piece of it. And even
Yeah.
though we're all connected, we're on Zoom and everything else, I think that sense of being heard in person is so
Yeah.
powerful. And I
Yeah.
think it's something we really need to work hard at incorporating into our lives more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm reflecting on what you're saying about the book. I'm gonna check that out, by the way. It sounds fabulous.
It's a
Um,
very interesting read.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you. You know, my mind went to my father had a really bad car accident in 2018. He was hit by a car when he was bicycling. And essentially what happened is the neurologist told us, he's not coming back. And if he does, there won't be anything there. And so I
Mm,
found myself, the first few days he was in a coma, praying that he would leave this earth, that his body would just leave the earth, because he was a brilliant endocrinologist, um, you know, so well read, most curious mind I've ever known. And this really surprising and magical thing happened. So the saying in my family is my mom loved him right back. We were there every day. The family was there. We dropped our lives to be there with them, with him. We played music. We had, pictures. We had all sorts of beautiful things that we brought into the room, knowing that maybe, just maybe, if we brought these elements in, that part of his brain would start lighting up again. So the executive function he almost completely lost, but When this man came back, Pat, oh my God, it was the most amazing thing in the world. It was like hanging out with the Dalai Lama. He was so grateful. He was so joyful. He was so optimistic. He was so supportive, so incredibly kind, so loving. And so no one can explain what happened. The neurologist can't explain it. They didn't even expect him to survive it. But the last few years of his life, and he did not die from that. He died from something from heart failure. But the last few years of his life, it was his 2-year-old was so wide awake, but it was married with that wisdom that he had as an 80-year-old person. And to be around him, to experience him in that way was nothing short of a gift. It was absolutely amazing. And all that I can imagine is that that part of his brain, as the executive function sort of shut down, it opened up more space for him to expand and for him to live into that space of possibility. And it was wonderful. I mean, he ate ice cream every day. It was great. It was great.
Well, it goes to the notion of duality. We learn experientially. We
Yeah.
don't know hot until we know cold. I think when you have something like that happen, something really catastrophic,
Yeah.
and then you come back, you come back in a way that is just as extreme as a negative thing that you experienced. And I think that's part of the beauty of hitting a really bad bump in the road. You have that possibility of having an equally powerful, positive experience on the other side. It will not be pretty, it will not be linear, it will not be easy, but it is a possibility. And I
Yeah.
think that that gives one hope. Just it gives one hope going through dark times.
Absolutely, it does. It's all a matter of choice. I say to people all the time that our mindset is our greatest point of control. And because the mind and the body, they're not just connected, they are unified. I mean, it's not a mind body connection. It is, Dr. Ellen Langer calls it mind body unity, just one piece, just fused together. And so knowing that we have the power to choose how we think, knowing that we have the power to choose how we show up, how we experience every single moment of our lives, gives us the strength, gives us the capacity to rise from any challenge that we may experience, any bump in the road, and to really experience something so magnificent on the other side. There are always lessons to be learned. I mean, as I think about this bump, recent bump, what I know is that there were other people around me who I could have trusted to lift me up, but it was tough because I am the one normally in that role, and so my ego got in the way, my fear got in the way of speaking my truth and giving them a chance to show up for me. But now I know that when I do that, because once we got back to Raleigh, I did raise my hand and, everybody said, "Why are you guys back?" And I said, "Well, I felt like I was disappearing. I mean, it was bad. The council showed up and they brought a new friend with them called depression." They were like so heartful for me and held so much space for me. And it's just human connection. There's nothing that can replace it. The screens are good, but
Mhm.
being with and being able to hold another person's hand or let them sit with you and wipe a tear or wrap their arms around you or celebrate with you, like whatever it is, we beings, human beings, um, it is a non-negotiable for us, that human connection, one to one or big groups, whatever we choose. It's absolutely essential.
And it's all good, and it's all so needed. I think in this day where we connect so much through our computers, it's more needed than ever. And, I wanna go back to just one other thing that you said earlier. You said something about saying yes. And I think this is a theme that comes up again and again in this podcast. Just say yes. And I think that there's so much truth to that. Now, obviously, you need to be a little discriminating. You don't need to go jumping off the highest bridge or whatever, but I think saying yes to life, yes to opportunities that come your way, yes to things that you may not be sure of sometimes is a critical piece of enjoying that sense of presence and mindfulness and expanding it all.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, the thing that leads us to yes is being open to possibility. My email signature literally says everything is possible. And some people will challenge that, and that's fine. I don't care. It's a mindset for me. Like, to me, if you can see it, you can make it real. So staying open to possibility. We do such a good job and again, it goes back to brain wiring. We do such a good job of coming up with every excuse why something can't be, why we can't. And we spend far less time being open to why we can. So I think staying open is the recipe for happiness, for possibility, for richness in life, for connections, for gosh, anything that could come our way in the day, getting away from the super scripted and overscheduled and being open, leaving a little free space for surprises. It's wonderful.